Earlier, I mentioned a way of writing to, in effect, put signs on paper. But William Stokoe didn't invent that system from scratch. He read that others had tried to create notation systems, so he borrowed the basic idea from that work. I already mentioned Babian's system briefly, but now I'll elaborate on his system, which Stokoe adapted. I'll show you the two signs listed here. I've also included an English gloss that expresses the same concept for each sign. The French signs for these concepts were brought to America and are still used in ASL today. The first one looks like this and was notated by Babian this way. I'll talk more about what those symbols mean. To start, it'll help to compare that notation with this one. This form looks like this. Returning to the notation, knowing this sign helps to decipher the symbols. There are arrows for movement to describe whether the direction of motion is outward, inward, or both. The direction of these arrows indicates an inward movement. But also note that these two symbols are pretty similar to this one. We can conclude that since the notation describes this form, the symbol represents this hand shape. But you just saw that the form meaning book is two-handed. Since these symbols are contrastive, as are the hands, we can deduce that they represent these hand shapes. The thumb is a clue to hand orientation, indicating that the symbols are meant to represent the physical forms as closely as possible in a way that can be drawn on paper. The same may be true for how movement is drawn. Now, by analyzing the sign form, apparently the next slot has something to do with movement, and the last slot represents the location of the hand, which covers the face, like this. The second slot relates to contact and movement. Altogether, you get this sign form. Now, 3 symbols are used in this notation, as opposed to 2 in this form. In comparing them, consistent patterns emerge. The first slot relates to hand shape, the second to movement, and the next to location. No is produced on the face, but that slot in book is empty. This is because Babian leaves that slot vacant when a sign is produced in the space in front of the body. To contrast this from other space, it could be thought of as neutral space. While the term neutral space is relatively recent, it has long been recognized that signs can be used in that space without using the body or making contact. That's why this slot has no filler. It's a null feature. Now, the order of this template is important because if you think about it, these were orthographic rules for how to organize symbols based on components of signs and how to use them in a consistent order. Babian based his system on this idea of having a template. I'll show this to you next. A slot and filler template basically means that there are empty placeholders for putting symbols. These various symbols are used as fillers for the placeholder slots. As you can see, there are 3 slots, one for each of the 3 primary parameters. Based on observation of what's essential for sign formation, the slots are for hand shape, movement, and location. This system was what gave Stokoe the idea for his system, which I'll show you next.